The Adventures of Bob the Happy Dog. Part 1. Meet Bob. Bob is a happy dog. He is big and brown. Bob likes to play. He lives with a nice family. The family has a mom, a dad, and 2 kids. They all love Bob very much. Every day, Bob wakes up early. He wags his tail and runs to the kitchen. He wants his breakfast. The family gives him yummy food. Bob eats fast. He is always hungry. After breakfast, Bob goes to the garden. He likes to run and jump. Sometimes he chases birds. But the birds are too fast for Bob. He never catches them. Bob doesn't mind. He just likes to play. The kids in the family love to play with Bob. They throw a ball for him. Bob runs very fast to get the ball. He brings it back to the kids. They laugh and throw it again. Bob can play this game all day. Bob has a special toy. It is a red rubber bone. He takes it everywhere. When he is happy, he carries the bone. When he is sad, he chews the bone. The bone makes Bob feel good. Sometimes, Bob gets into trouble. He likes to dig holes in the garden. Mom and Dad don't like this. They tell Bob, "No digging." But Bob forgets and digs again. He just loves to dig. Bob also likes to steal food. If someone leaves food on the table, Bob tries to eat it. Once he ate a whole pizza. He had a big tummy ache after that. But he still tries to steal food when he can. At night, Bob sleeps in a cozy bed. It is next to the kids' room. If he hears a noise, he barks. He wants to protect his family. They feel safe with Bob in the house. Bob is more than a pet. He is part of the family. They take him on trips and to the park. Bob loves to go for rides in the car. He sticks his head out the window and feels the wind on his face. Every day with Bob is fun and full of love. He makes his family very happy, and Bob is happy too. He has the best life a dog could want. Part 2. Bob's Big Adventure. One sunny day, Bob's family decided to go on a picnic. They packed a big basket with sandwiches, fruits, and cookies. Bob was very excited. He loved family trips. They drove to a big park. There were many trees and a small lake. Bob couldn't wait to explore. As soon as the car stopped, he jumped out. He ran around, sniffing everything. The family found a nice spot under a big tree. They put down a blanket and started to eat. Bob sat next to them, hoping for some food. He looked at them with big, sad eyes. "No, Bob," said Dad. "This is our food. You have your own." He gave Bob some dog treats. Bob ate them, but he still wanted more. After lunch, the kids wanted to play. They took out a frisbee. "Let's play with Bob," they said. They threw the frisbee, and Bob ran after it. He jumped high and caught it in his mouth. Everyone clapped. But then Bob saw something move in the bushes. It was a small rabbit. Bob forgot all about the frisbee. He started to chase the rabbit. The rabbit was very fast. It ran and ran. Bob ran after the rabbit. He ran far away from his family. He didn't hear them calling his name. He just wanted to catch the rabbit. The rabbit ran into a small hole. Bob couldn't follow. He looked around. He was in a part of the park he didn't know. He couldn't see his family anywhere. Bob was lost. Bob started to feel scared. He didn't know where to go. He walked around, sniffing the ground. He was trying to find a familiar smell, but everything smelled new and strange. As he walked, Bob met other animals. He saw some ducks swimming in a pond. He barked at them, but they just swam away. He saw some squirrels in the trees. They chattered at him and ran up higher. Bob was getting tired and hungry. He missed his family. He wanted to go home. But which way was home? Bob sat down and howled. He hoped someone would hear him. Meanwhile, Bob's family was looking everywhere for him. They called his name and walked all around the park. They were very worried. Where could Bob be? Just then, they heard a howl. "That's Bob!" shouted the kids. They all ran towards the sound. They ran and ran until they saw a brown shape in the distance. It was Bob. "Bob, Bob," they called. Bob heard his name. He saw his family running towards him. He was so happy. He ran to them as fast as he could. When they met, there were lots of hugs and kisses. Bob was very glad to be back with his family. He promised himself he would never chase rabbits again. Well, maybe just small chases. The family walked back to their picnic spot. They packed up their things and got ready to go home. Bob was very tired from his big adventure. In the car, he fell asleep right away. That night, Bob had dreams about rabbits and parks and frisbees. But the best part of his dream was being with his family. He was the happiest dog in the world. Part 3. Bob makes new friends. A few weeks after the picnic adventure, Bob's family decided to take him to a new place. It was a dog park. Bob had never been to a dog park before. He didn't know what to expect. When they arrived, Bob saw many other dogs. Big dogs, small dogs, fluffy dogs, and short-haired dogs. They were all running around and playing. Bob was excited, but also a little nervous. His family opened the car door, and Bob jumped out. They walked to the gate of the park. "Go on, Bob," said Mom. "Go play with the other dogs." Bob looked at her, not sure what to do. Just then, a small white dog ran up to Bob. It wagged its tail and barked happily. Bob sniffed the new dog. It smelled friendly. Bob wagged his tail too. The white dog wanted to play. It ran in circles around Bob, then ran away. Bob understood. This was a game of chase. He ran after the white dog, having fun already. As they ran, Bob met more dogs. There was a big black dog that liked to play fetch. Bob joined in, running after the ball with the other dogs. There was a brown fluffy dog that liked to dig. Bob showed it his digging skills. Bob was having so much fun. He ran and played and made many new friends. He forgot all about being nervous. The dog park was a wonderful place. After a while, Bob got thirsty. He went to a water bowl that was in the park. Other dogs were there too. They all drank together. then went back to playing. Bob's family watched him play. They were happy to see him having so much fun. "Look how many friends Bob is making," said Dad. The kids laughed as they saw Bob rolling in the grass with his new dog friends. Part 4. Bob Goes to the Beach. One hot summer day, Bob's family decided to go to the beach. Bob had never seen the ocean before. He was very excited. They packed the car with towels, umbrellas, and lots of food. Bob got his favorite red ball, too. The drive to the beach was long. Bob slept most of the way. When they arrived, Bob woke up. He could smell something new. It was salty and fresh. Bob jumped out of the car and saw the big blue ocean. He barked with joy. The family found a good spot on the sand. They put up an umbrella and laid out towels. Bob wanted to run to the water right away. But first, Dad put on Bob's special life jacket. Safety first. Bob ran to the edge of the water. The waves came in and touched his paws. The water was cold. Bob jumped back. Then he tried again. This time he liked it. The kids threw Bob's ball into the shallow water. Bob ran in to get it. He splashed around, having so much fun. He brought the ball back, all wet and happy. After playing in the water, Bob decided to explore the beach. He walked along the sand, sniffing everything. He found a seashell and tried to eat it. Mom quickly took it away. "No, Bob, that's not food." Bob saw some seagulls on the sand. He tried to chase them, but they flew away. Bob barked at them as they flew over his head. Later, the family had a picnic on the beach. They ate sandwiches and fruits. Bob got some of his dog food and a special treat, a small piece of grilled chicken. After lunch, Bob was tired. He lay down on a towel under the umbrella. The sound of the waves made him sleepy. He took a nice nap in the shade. When Bob woke up, it was time to go home. He was sad to leave the beach, but he was also tired from all the fun. In the car, Bob fell asleep right away, dreaming of waves and seagulls. That night, Bob's fur was a bit salty, and there was sand between his toes, but he was very happy. He had a wonderful day at the beach with his family. Part 5. Bob's Rainy Day Adventure. One morning, Bob woke up to a strange sound. It was rain hitting the windows. Bob looked outside. The sky was gray, and water was falling everywhere. Bob didn't like rainy days. He couldn't go outside to play. He felt sad and bored. He lay on his bed, looking out the window. The kids were home too. They couldn't go to school because of the heavy rain. They saw that Bob was sad. "Let's play with Bob inside," they said. First, they played hide and seek. Bob was very good at finding the kids. He used his nose to sniff them out. Even when they hid in the closet, Bob found them. Then they played tug-of-war with Bob's rope toy. Bob was strong, but the kids worked together. Sometimes Bob won, and sometimes the kids won. Everyone laughed and had fun. After lunch, Mom had an idea. "Let's build a fort," she said. They used blankets and chairs to make a big fort in the living room. Bob helped by carrying small pillows in his mouth. The fort was cozy. They all sat inside, including Bob. Dad read stories while they listened to the rain outside. Bob lay down, happy to be close to his family. Suddenly, there was a loud noise. Boom! It was thunder. Bob got scared and started to bark. The kids hugged him and said, "It's okay, Bob. You're safe." To help Bob feel better, they decided to teach him a new trick. They showed him how to roll over. It was hard at first, but Bob learned quickly. He got lots of treats and pets for doing a good job. As the day went on, the rain started to stop. The clouds moved away and the sun came out. Bob saw a rainbow in the sky. It was beautiful. Now that it wasn't raining, Bob could go outside. The grass was wet, and there were puddles everywhere. Bob loved it. He ran through the puddles, splashing water everywhere. The kids laughed and played with him. At the end of the day, Bob was wet and muddy. He needed a bath, but he didn't mind. He had such a fun day, even though it started rainy. That night, as Bob fell asleep, he thought about all the fun things he did. He realized that even rainy days can be good days when you're with the people you love. Part 6. Bob's Birthday Surprise. One morning, Bob woke up and felt that something was different. The house smelled nice, and everyone was acting excited. Bob didn't know why. "Happy birthday, Bob," the family shouted. Bob didn't understand what birthday meant, but he wagged his tail because everyone seemed happy. Mom put a special hat on Bob's head. It had a picture of a bone and said "Birthday Boy." Bob didn't like hats, but he let Mom put it on him. He knew it made her happy. For breakfast, Bob got a special treat. It was a small cake made just for dogs. It was shaped like a bone and tasted very good. Bob ate it all up very quickly. After breakfast, the family took Bob to the pet store. They let him choose a new toy. Bob sniffed all the toys. He picked a squeaky toy that looked like a squirrel. The family bought it for him. When they got home, Bob saw something new in the backyard. It was a big, colorful box. Dad said, "This is your birthday present, Bob." Bob sniffed the box. Suddenly, the top opened, and out jumped 3 of Bob's dog friends from the park. They all started to play together in the yard. The kids filled a small pool with water. The dogs splashed and played in it. They ran around the yard, chasing balls and having fun. Bob was so happy to play with his friends. Later, more people came to the house. They were the neighbors and their dogs. Everyone sang "Happy Birthday" to Bob. He didn't know the song, but he barked along anyway. There was a big cake for the people and special dog treats for all the dogs. Bob got the biggest treat because it was his birthday. He shared some with his friends because that's what good dogs do. As the sun started to go down, Bob's friends had to go home. Bob was tired but very happy. It was the best day ever. That night, Bob slept with his new squirrel toy. He dreamed about playing with his friends and eating yummy treats. He didn't know what a birthday was, but he knew it was something special. From that day on, whenever Bob heard the word birthday, his tail would wag. He couldn't wait for his next birthday adventure. Part 7. Bob Goes to School. One day, Bob saw the kids getting ready to go somewhere. They had backpacks and looked excited. Bob wanted to go too. "Sorry, Bob," said Mom. "You can't go to school. Dogs don't go to school." Bob felt sad. He wanted to learn too. He watched as the kids left in the school bus. Later that day, Mom got a phone call. It was from the kids' school. "We're having a special day," said the teacher. "We want to teach the children about pets. Can you bring Bob to school?" Mom was happy. "Of course," she said. She told Bob the good news. "You're going to school, Bob." The next day, Bob got in the car with Mom. They drove to the school. Bob was very excited. He wagged his tail all the way there. When they arrived, Bob saw many children. They all wanted to pet him. Bob loved the attention. He gave lots of kisses to the kids. The teacher asked Mom to talk about taking care of a dog. While Mom talked, Bob sat nicely. He was being a very good boy. Then it was time for Bob to show some tricks. He sat, stayed, and rolled over. The children clapped and cheered. Bob felt very proud. After that, the children asked questions. "What does Bob eat? How often does he need walks?" Bob listened to Mom's answers. He was learning too. At the end of the day, the teacher gave Bob a special certificate. It said honorary student on it. Bob didn't know what it meant, but he knew it was good. On the way home, Mom told Bob he was a very good dog. "You did so well at school today," she said. Bob was happy. He decided that school was fun. That night, Bob dreamed about going to school every day. In his dream, he sat at a desk and learned to read. When he woke up, he was a bit disappointed. But then he remembered he was a dog, and being a dog was the best thing in the world. Part 8. Bob's Winter Wonderland. One morning, Bob woke up and something was different. The world outside was white. Snow had fallen during the night. Bob had never seen snow before. He ran to the window and barked. He wanted to go outside right away. The family put on warm clothes. They put a special jacket on Bob to keep him warm. Then they all went outside. Bob stepped into the snow. It was cold on his paws. He jumped and played in the white fluffy stuff. He tried to catch snowflakes with his mouth. The kids started to make a snowman. Bob helped by rolling in the snow. He made funny shapes that made everyone laugh. Then Dad brought out a sled. The kids took turns riding down a small hill. Bob ran alongside the sled, barking happily. Mom threw a snowball for Bob to catch, but when Bob tried to catch it, the snowball broke apart. Bob was confused. Where did the ball go? After playing outside for a long time, everyone got cold. They went back inside the house. Mom made hot chocolate for the family and warm water for Bob. Bob lay down near the fireplace to get warm. His fur was wet from the snow, but he felt happy. He had so much fun in the snow. That night, Bob dreamed of a world made of snow. In his dream, he could make snow bones and snow dogs to play with. When he woke up, he ran to the window. The snow was still there. Bob wagged his tail. He couldn't wait to play in the snow again. Part 9. Bob's New Neighbor. One day, Bob noticed something different on his street. A big truck was parked in front of the house next door. People were carrying boxes and furniture into the house. Bob was curious. He barked to tell his family. They looked out the window. "Oh, look," said Dad. "We have new neighbors." Later that day, Mom baked some cookies. "Let's go say hello to our new neighbors," she said. The whole family went next door. Bob came too, of course. They knocked on the door. A nice lady opened it. "Welcome to the neighborhood," said Mom, giving her the cookies. The lady smiled. "Thank you. Would you like to come in?" They all went inside. Bob sniffed around the new house. It smelled different. Then he heard a sound. It was coming from another room. Suddenly, a cat walked into the room. Bob had never seen a cat up close before. He was very excited. The cat looked at Bob. Bob wagged his tail. He wanted to play, but the cat didn't look very happy. It ran and hid under a chair. "Oh, that's Whiskers," said the nice lady. "She's a bit shy." Bob tried to make friends with Whiskers. He went close to the chair and gave a small, friendly bark, but Whiskers just hissed at him. The family talked with the new neighbors for a while. Bob sat quietly, hoping Whiskers would come out, but the cat stayed hidden. When it was time to go home, Bob felt a bit sad. He wanted to be friends with Whiskers. Maybe next time, he thought. Over the next few weeks, Bob saw Whiskers in the window of the neighbor's house. Each time, he wagged his tail. Slowly, Whiskers stopped hiding when she saw Bob. One day, Bob was playing in his yard. He saw Whiskers sitting on the fence. This time, Whiskers didn't run away. She just watched Bob play. Bob was happy. He knew that one day he and Whiskers would be good friends. It just takes time to make new friends, especially when one is a dog and one is a cat. Part 10. Bob Goes Camping. One weekend, Bob's family decided to go camping. They packed the car with tents, sleeping bags, and lots of food. Bob was excited to go. Part 10. Bob Goes Camping. One weekend, Bob's family decided to go camping. They packed the car with tents, sleeping bags, and lots of food. Bob was excited to go on a new adventure. After a long drive, they arrived at a big forest. There were tall trees everywhere. Bob could smell so many new things. The family found a nice spot to set up camp. Dad and the kids put up the tents. Mom started to make a fire. Bob watched and wagged his tail, ready to help. When the tents were up, the family went for a hike. Bob loved walking in the forest. He saw squirrels and birds. He even saw a big deer. The deer ran away when it saw Bob. At night, they all sat around the campfire. Dad told funny stories. Mom made hot dogs for everyone. Bob got a special camping treat, a big bone to chew on. When it was time to sleep, Bob went into the tent with the kids. It was a bit small, but Bob liked being close to his family. He felt safe and warm. In the middle of the night, Bob heard a noise outside. He gave a small bark to wake up Dad. Dad looked outside and saw a raccoon trying to get into their food box. Dad scared the raccoon away. "Good job, Bob," he said. You're a great guard dog." Bob felt very proud. The next day, they went to a lake near their campsite. The water was cold, but Bob loved swimming. He played fetch with a stick in the water. When it was time to go home, Bob was tired but happy. He had so much fun camping. He hoped they would go again soon. On the drive home, Bob fell asleep in the car. He dreamed of forests, lakes, and campfires. Camping was his new favorite thing. Part 11. Bob's Trip to the Vet. One day, Mom noticed that Bob wasn't feeling well. He didn't want to eat his food, and he wasn't as playful as usual. Mom decided it was time for Bob to visit the vet. Bob knew the word vet. It meant going to a place that smelled funny. He didn't like it very much. When Mom got his leash, Bob tried to hide under the bed. "It's okay, Bob," said Mom. "The vet will help you feel better." Bob came out slowly. He trusted Mom, even if he was a little scared. At the vet's office, there were other dogs and cats in the waiting room. Bob sniffed them and wagged his tail. He was nervous, but he tried to be brave. When it was Bob's turn, a nice lady in a white coat came to get him. This was Dr. Smith, the vet. She petted Bob and gave him a treat. Dr. Smith looked in Bob's ears and mouth. She listened to his heart. Bob sat very still, even though he wanted to run away. "Bob has an ear infection," said Dr. Smith. "That's why he doesn't feel good. But we can fix it." She gave Mom some medicine for Bob. Before they left, Dr. Smith gave Bob a special toy for being so good. Bob felt better already. He wasn't scared of the vet anymore. At home, Bob had to take his medicine twice a day. It didn't taste very good, but Mom always gave him a treat after. Soon, Bob's ear felt much better. A week later, they went back to the vet. Dr. Smith checked Bob's ear again. "All better," she said. Bob wagged his tail. He was happy to be healthy again. From that day on, Bob wasn't afraid of going to the vet. He knew that even if it wasn't always fun, the vet helped him stay healthy and strong. Part 12. Bob's New Trick. One rainy afternoon, the family was bored at home. "Let's teach Bob a new trick," said the youngest kid. Everyone thought it was a great idea. They decided to teach Bob how to shake hands. It seemed like a fun and easy trick. Bob was excited to learn something new. First, Dad showed Bob what to do. He held Bob's paw and said, "Shake." Then he gave Bob a treat. Bob liked getting treats, but he didn't understand the trick yet. They tried again and again. Sometimes Bob would lift his paw, but not when Dad said shake. Other times, he would just sit and wag his tail. It was harder than they thought. The family took turns trying to teach Bob. Mom used a different treat. The older kid tried saying shake in a funny voice. The younger kid tried to show Bob by shaking hands with everyone. Bob was trying his best, but he still couldn't do the trick. The family started to get a little frustrated, but they didn't give up. Then the oldest kid had an idea. "Let's try something different," he said. He held a treat in his closed hand. When Bob pawed at his hand to get the treat, the kid said shake and gave Bob the treat. Suddenly, Bob understood. He started lifting his paw every time someone said shake. The family was so happy. They gave Bob lots of pets and treats. For the rest of the day, everyone wanted to shake hands with Bob. He got so good at it that he started offering his paw even before anyone said shake. That night, Bob dreamed about shaking hands with everyone he met. In his dream, he even shook hands with a friendly squirrel. The next day, when the mailman came, Bob ran to the door and lifted his paw to shake hands. The mailman laughed and said, "What a smart dog!" Bob was very proud of his new trick. He loved learning new things, especially when it made his family so happy. He wondered what exciting trick he would learn next. Part 13. Bob's Day at the Dog Park. One sunny Saturday, Bob's family decided to take him to a new dog park in town. Bob loved going to parks, but this one was special. It was much bigger than the others and had many fun things for dogs to do. When they arrived, Bob could hardly contain his excitement. He wagged his tail so hard that his whole body wiggled. At the entrance, there was a big sign with rules. Dad read them out loud. All dogs must be friendly. Pick up after your dog. No food inside the park. Bob didn't understand all the words, but he knew he was going to have fun. As soon as they went inside, Bob saw many dogs of all sizes and colors. There were big dogs, small dogs, fluffy dogs, and short-haired dogs. Bob wanted to meet them all. First, Bob ran to the agility course. It had tunnels to run through, jumps to leap over, and poles to weave between. Bob had never seen anything like it before. He watched as other dogs ran the course, then decided to try it himself. Bob ran into the tunnel. It was dark inside, but he wasn't scared. He came out the other end feeling proud. Then he tried to jump over a small hurdle. He knocked it down the first time, but on his second try, he made it over. Everyone cheered for Bob. Next, Bob found a big open field where dogs were chasing balls and frisbees. A friendly Labrador invited Bob to play fetch with her and her owner. Bob loved running after the ball and bringing it back. He and the Labrador took turns, and soon they became good friends. In another part of the park, there was a small pool for dogs. It was a hot day, so Bob decided to take a dip. The water felt so good on his fur. He splashed around, cooling off and having fun. Some other dogs joined him, and they all played in the water together. After playing in the pool, Bob shook himself dry. Water went everywhere. Some nearby people laughed, but they didn't mind getting a little wet on a hot day. As the afternoon went on, Bob met more and more dogs. He played chase with a fast little terrier, had a gentle tug-of-war with an old bulldog, and even made friends with a tiny Chihuahua who was a bit scared at first. Bob's family watched him play, smiling at how much fun he was having. They took lots of pictures to remember the day. When it was time to go home, Bob was tired but very happy. He had made new friends, tried new things, and had a wonderful adventure. On the car ride home, Bob fell asleep, dreaming of all the fun he had at the dog park. He couldn't wait to go back and see his new friends again. That night, as Bob cuddled up in his bed, he thought about his day. He loved his family and his home, but he also loved adventures and making new friends. Bob decided that the dog park was one of his favorite places in the whole world. Part 14. Bob's Farm Adventure. One day, Bob's family decided to visit Grandma and Grandpa's farm. Bob had never been to a farm before. He was very excited to see new things and smell new smells. After a long car ride, they finally arrived at the farm. Bob jumped out of the car and looked around. There were big fields, a red barn, and lots of animals he had never seen before. Grandma and Grandpa came out to greet them. They were happy to see Bob. "What a nice dog," said Grandpa. He patted Bob's head gently. First, Grandpa took everyone to see the cows. The cows were very big, much bigger than Bob. They made a loud moo sound. Bob was a bit scared at first, but he saw that the cows were friendly. Next, they went to the chicken coop. The chickens were pecking at the ground, looking for food. When Bob got close, they all ran away, making loud noises. Bob didn't want to scare them, so he sat quietly and watched. In the barn, Bob met some cats. They were very different from Whiskers, his neighbor cat. These cats weren't afraid of Bob. They even let him sniff them. Bob decided that farm cats were nice. Then Grandma showed them the sheep. The sheep had fluffy white wool. Bob thought they looked like big, fluffy pillows with legs. The sheep said "bow" when they saw Bob. He wagged his tail to show he was friendly. At lunchtime, everyone sat outside to eat. Grandma made delicious sandwiches. Bob got a special treat, a bone from Grandpa's kitchen. He chewed on it happily while listening to the family talk and laugh. After lunch, the kids wanted to play in the big field. They threw a frisbee for Bob. He ran and jumped, catching the frisbee in the air. Bob loved having so much space to run. As the sun started to go down, Grandpa asked if anyone wanted to help milk the cows. Bob watched curiously as Grandpa showed the kids how to milk a cow. The white milk went into a big bucket. Bob sniffed the milk, but he knew it wasn't for him to drink. Before they left, Grandma gave everyone fresh eggs to take home. "These are from our chickens," she said. Bob sniffed the eggs. They smelled interesting, but he knew they were fragile and didn't try to play with them. On the way home, Bob was very tired. He had seen and learned so many new things. He dreamed about cows, chickens, and sheep as he slept in the car. That night, back in his own bed, Bob thought about his day on the farm. He loved the open spaces, the friendly animals, and the new experiences. Bob decided that farms were wonderful places, and he hoped he could visit again soon. The next morning, when Bob went for his walk in the neighborhood, he looked at everything differently. He noticed the birds in the trees and the flowers in the gardens. His trip to the farm had taught him to appreciate nature even more. Bob realized that every day could be an adventure if you keep your eyes, ears, and nose open to the world around you. Part 15. Bob's Rainy Day Indoor Olympics. It had been raining for 3 days straight. Bob was starting to feel bored. He couldn't go for walks or play in the garden. He spent most of his time looking out the window, hoping the rain would stop. The kids were getting restless too. Then, Mom had a great idea. "Let's have an indoor Olympics," she said. Everyone got excited, including Bob. First, they had a sock sliding contest. The kids put on slippery socks and slid across the smooth floor. Bob couldn't wear socks, but he ran alongside the kids, wagging his tail and barking happily. Next was the pillow obstacle course. Dad set up pillows all over the living room. Everyone had to walk across the room, stepping only on the pillows. Bob tried too, but he kept knocking the pillows over with his big paws. Everyone laughed, and Bob wagged his tail, feeling like he was part of the fun. Then they had an indoor scavenger hunt. Mom made a list of things to find around the house. Bob didn't understand the list, but he loved following the kids around as they searched for items. Sometimes he even found things before the kids did. The balloon keep-up game was Bob's favorite. The family had to keep a balloon in the air without letting it touch the ground. Bob jumped and bounced, trying to help. He didn't always hit the balloon, but he had so much fun trying. For the last event, they had an indoor picnic and storytelling contest. Everyone sat on a blanket in the living room and told funny stories. Bob didn't understand all the words, but he loved lying there, surrounded by his family, listening to their voices and laughter. At the end of the day, everyone got a medal made from paper. Bob got a special medal, too, for being the best canine Olympian. He wore it proudly for the rest of the evening. That night, as Bob fell asleep, he decided that rainy days weren't so bad after all. With a little imagination, any day could be fun. Part 16. Bob's Beach Cleanup Adventure. Summer came, and it was time for another trip to the beach. Bob was excited to feel the sand under his paws and play in the waves again. But when they arrived at the beach, something was different. There was trash everywhere. Empty bottles, plastic bags, and other litter covered the sand. Bob's family looked sad. "This is terrible," said Dad. "The beach is so dirty." Mom had an idea. "Why don't we clean it up?" she suggested. Everyone agreed, including Bob. He didn't understand words like pollution or environment, but he knew that his family wanted to make the beach nice again. They got some gloves and trash bags from a nearby store. Then they started picking up the litter. Bob couldn't pick up trash with his paws, but he found a way to help. When he saw a piece of trash, he would bark to show his family where it was. As they cleaned, other people on the beach noticed what they were doing. Some of them joined in to help. Soon there were many people cleaning the beach together. Bob made new friends too. He met a friendly Labrador who was helping her family clean. They played together between finding trash, running through the shallow water, and shaking water all over their laughing families. After a few hours of work, the beach looked beautiful again. The sand was clean, and the only things left on it were pretty shells and smooth pebbles. A man from the local council came to thank everyone for their help. He gave Bob's family a certificate for being beach heroes. Bob got an extra pat on the head for being a good helper. Finally, they could enjoy the clean beach. They had a picnic, played in the waves, and built a big sandcastle. Bob had fun running around the sandcastle, being careful not to knock it down. On the way home, Bob was tired but happy. He had learned something new. that it's important to keep places clean, not just for humans but for all animals who live there. That night, Bob dreamed of a big clean beach where dogs and humans could play together happily. He couldn't wait for their next beach trip.
Part 17. Bob's Puppy Playdate. One day, Mom and Dad told the family some exciting news. Our neighbor's dog just had puppies. They said, "We're going to visit them today." Bob didn't know what puppies meant, but he could tell it was something good. Everyone seemed very happy and excited. When they arrived at the neighbor's house, Bob heard some high-pitched barking. It sounded different from any dog he had heard before. The neighbor led them to a room where a big dog was lying in a cozy bed. Around her were 5 tiny dogs, the puppies. They were so small, much smaller than Bob. Bob sniffed the puppies curiously. They smelled like dogs, but also different. The mother dog watched Bob carefully, but she could see he was gentle and kind. The puppies were very playful. They climbed over each other, making funny little noises. One brave puppy came up to Bob and tried to chew on his tail. Bob didn't mind. He wagged his tail gently, making the puppy bounce up and down. Bob learned he had to be very careful around the puppies. They were much smaller and more fragile than him. He lay down on the floor so they could climb on him and play. The kids took turns holding the puppies. They were so soft and cuddly. Bob watched, making sure the puppies were safe. He felt like a big brother to these tiny dogs. Before they left, the neighbor told them they could come back and visit the puppies again. Bob was happy to hear this. He liked his new little friends. On the way home, the family talked about how the puppies would grow up to be big dogs one day, just like Bob. Bob didn't understand all the words, but he felt proud to be a big, grown-up dog. That night, Bob dreamed about playing with the puppies. In his dream, he taught them how to fetch and how to be good dogs. Bob decided that being a friend to puppies was a very important job, and he was glad he could do it. Part 18. Bob's Autumn Leaf Adventure. The weather was getting cooler, and the leaves on the trees were changing colors. Bob noticed that the green leaves were turning red, orange, and yellow. It was beautiful. One windy day, Bob's family decided to go to the park. The ground was covered with colorful leaves. As they walked, the leaves crunched under their feet. Bob loved the sound. The kids started to play in the leaves. They gathered big piles of leaves and jumped in them. Bob watched, curious about what they were doing. Then, Dad threw some leaves in the air. They floated down slowly, like colorful rain. Bob thought this looked like fun. He ran through the falling leaves, trying to catch them in his mouth. Mom showed Bob how to run through a pile of leaves. At first, Bob was careful, but when he saw how much fun it was, he started running and jumping through every pile he could find. The family laughed as Bob played in the leaves. Sometimes, he would disappear into a big pile and pop out the other side, covered in leaves. He looked so funny. As they played, Bob learned about different kinds of leaves. Some were big and wide, while others were small and pointy. Some leaves were rough, and others were smooth. Bob sniffed each kind, learning their different smells. The kids decided to have a leaf collecting contest. They wanted to find the prettiest leaves in the park. Bob helped by running around and pointing out colorful leaves with his nose. At the end of the day, everyone's pockets were full of beautiful leaves. They decided to make a leaf scrapbook at home. Bob couldn't help with the scrapbook, but he got to keep a big, crunchy leaf as a toy. On the way home, Bob was tired but happy. He had leaves stuck in his fur, but he didn't mind. He had discovered a whole new way to play. That night, Bob dreamed of a world made of leaves. In his dream, he ran through endless piles of colorful, crunchy leaves. He decided that autumn was a wonderful season, full of new smells and fun things to do. Part 19. Bob's Christmas Surprise. The weather got even colder, and soon it was winter. Bob noticed that the house looked different. There were colorful lights and pretty decorations everywhere. The family called it Christmas. One day, Dad brought home a big green tree. Bob was confused. Why was there a tree inside the house? But everyone seemed excited about it. The family decorated the tree with shiny balls, twinkling lights, and sparkly tinsel. Bob watched carefully, making sure not to knock anything over with his wagging tail. Mom told Bob not to chew on the wrapped boxes under the tree. They were called presents. Bob didn't understand, but he knew it was important to be a good boy. On Christmas Eve, the kids were very excited. They told Bob that Santa Claus was coming. Bob didn't know who Santa was, but he decided to stay awake to see him. That night, Bob tried hard to stay awake. But soon, he fell asleep on his cozy bed. When he woke up in the morning, he heard excited voices. The kids were opening their presents. Bob got a surprise too. There was a present for him under the tree. Dad helped him open it. Inside was a new soft bed and some yummy dog treats. Bob was so happy. The family spent the day playing with their new toys. They ate a big dinner with lots of yummy food. Bob got some special Christmas dog food in his bowl. Later, they all went for a walk in the snow. Bob loved playing in the white, fluffy stuff. He ran around, catching snowflakes on his tongue. That night, as Bob cuddled in his new bed, he thought about Christmas. He didn't understand everything about it, but he knew it was a time when everyone was happy and kind. Bob decided that Christmas was magical, not because of the presents or the tree, but because it brought his family together and filled the house with love and joy. He couldn't wait for next Christmas.